This is a short course in Paleolithic psychology or archaic spirituality. So the archetype of the trickster is a very, very early archetype in the history of humanity, and one sort of barely between animal and human, and therefore dedicated to survival by any means of cunning. The trickster in particular is likely to be so cunning that they routinely do themselves in the process. So cunning cannot be counted on as virtuous. And cunning, in a certain sense, disconnects us from the heart. So we'll be dealing with the shadow side of the trickster as well. And so Jung, toward the end of his career, actually referred to an archetype as a scintilla. That is Latin, of course, and we get our word scintillating from that, which means to be filled with light. So you can imagine the unconscious as kind of a dense primal soup with a whole bunch of sparklets brewing within the soup, and some of them, in a certain sense, begging for your attention at a given point in your life. And so for the most part, what the trickster does is this. The trickster appears whenever you are lying to yourself. From my vantage point, the unconscious is not actually unconscious. We call it the unconscious because we're unconscious of it, not because it is unconscious of us. In fact, deep within the true self, here's the soul who is, shall we say, orchestrating all of the tomfooleries of your life, all of the mistakes and misturns and miscues and all of those kinds of things. And let me say this, two things. One quote that's beautiful from Boethius. I included this in the publicity, which is God writes straight with crooked lines. And that means from the vantage point of the unconscious, you will probably meander into very interesting relationships, entrapments, bizarre happenings, coinkydinks that you can't actually control. So what we let's say it this way: if the trickster is basically a runner between worlds, the way the Greeks talked about this is psychopomp or psychopompus. Let's say that together. Psychopompus. Yeah, that means a runner between worlds, a runner between unconscious life and conscious life, as in dreams, or puns, or Freudian slips, or nightmares. What we're really working on today is how the trickster, through the function of magic, constructs the magical self. There is a kind of enthusiasm or glee or mirth that comes from a person who is connected with the magical self, because their life is sprinkled by the trickster with all kinds of little tweaky indirections. I'll tell you something else from the vantage point of men's work in particular. The trickster goes to work on deteriorating a man's addiction to the hero archetype. I repeat, the trickster goes to work on deteriorating a man's addiction to the hero archetype for the sake of humanizing him, for the sake of making him real. There's no pretense any longer. And because there's no pretense any longer, the vivifying energy that is installing itself from the unconscious through the psychopompos will tonify your life and cultivate incrementally the energy of the magical self.